Hey everyone, Mike here from Clear Brands Grow. Today I am joined by Brad Ewin. Some of you may remember Brad from a previous video where he talked about how small businesses shouldn't focus on content marketing in the traditional sense, so sort of trying to dominate SEO. He's back for more. In fact, Brad organized this meeting himself. He was that keen. And today, Brad basically wants to give you some tips on how to improve writing in any area of your business. So Brad, take it away.
Yeah, sure. No, it's fun to come back. I really enjoyed doing this the first time round, and I thought, why not do it again?
Man, I just love having you on. I just love the keenness. Like you can
Yeah,
book a call with me anytime you want.
it's good fun. I also like talking about writing as well. I mean, it's what I do. But yeah, okay, cool. So one thing I thought is, yeah, last time I was all sort of doom and gloom, maybe not doom and gloom, but last time I sort of came in with the non-traditional being like, don't do content marketing. But I think I hope I explained reasonably well what I meant by that and why you should do that. Anyway, go check out the previous video Mike released if you are interested in that. But yeah, what's been on my mind lately, just through what I'm doing in my day job at GoCardless, is how people like non-writers, and by that I mean someone who isn't like a writer by role, which is kind of what I am at GC, but how non-writers can still write better in what they do, because writing makes up so much of what we do. Like I think there can sometimes be this mindset that like, oh, I don't need to learn writing tips, or I don't really need to learn how to write better. That's something for writers. Like I already know how to write emails, or I already know how to do this. Like I don't need to upgrade that. But I mean, I think that there are some tips that can be shared which can actually like have a significant improvement on things like emails and stuff like that. And you might think that's not that important, but it can be, right? It can be the difference between, getting your point across to someone. It can be the difference between having them treat your request as a priority, and things like that. Like we all get flooded with so much stuff that, actually caring about writing and putting time and effort into honing your writing can actually benefit you greatly. I mean, even just like one thing I've had mentioned to me, like internally at work, sort of putting out more kind of like internal comms about stuff that I'm working on. Like I've had some people direct message me on Slack and be like, hey, like, well done on putting this stuff together. And like that, people sort of pay more attention to the work that I'm doing now because of the way I'm writing about it. I'm using an email template that I think is really, really eye-catching and informative, right? So people come into this email and they don't go, ugh, like another project update email from someone, so much text here, skim, archive. Like instead, I like to hope that, the template that I've put together is more engaging than that, and the copy that I'm using is quicker and easier to read. So people are more likely to pay attention to it, and that that reflects well on me, and puts me in a sort of in a good position in other people's eyes, which is something that I like. So yeah, that's the kind of a long-winded example of how and why writing is important in other aspects outside of being a writer. Like you don't have to be a dedicated writer. No. I will admit though, and I did admit this to Mike before we started recording, that I haven't prepared particularly well for this session. So I'm going to chop and change through a couple of things, like windows that I have open on my computer here. So it might look like through the reflection on my face and me like looking around, it might look like I'm doing something else. It's literally just me picking up some of these things that I put together because I wasn't very prepared for today.
I feel like you could have probably winged it. And like
I don't know, man. You can definitely tell
up,
like the light changes on my face when I change window away from Zoom to something else.
Or it could just be like you just don't look interested. You're not interested in the conversation, and actually you're just browsing.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want it to come across like that. But yeah, no. So a few thoughts that I have across a couple of different things. So there's some just like raw notes that I've made, just on things I've been thinking about lately, as well as some writing tips I actually gave on an other podcast I've been on before, and then in a blog post I wrote before. So it's kind of like three sort of areas I might lift from, but I might just pick and choose a few things that I think could be interesting and helpful to people watching this.
Perfect. Go for it.
Yeah, one tip that I think is super helpful is like don't how do I put it? Don't don't have too many like preconceived notions about what business writing is. People try and, I think, often try and like sound really intelligent or important or successful, and like those are great things to convey, but I think they're often they're not conveyed as successfully as they think, because they're trying to like artificially show that through the kind of wording they uses, and really it kind of detracts from the message. It actually it has the opposite of the intended effect. I think how you can remedy that is basically just keep in mind the person reading your thing is never really going to care about it as much as you are, and that's okay. Like it sounds like that's a bad thing, but that's totally fine. And I think what you need to do is basically just like tell them the thing you want to tell them, or show them the thing you want to show them, just in the fewest words possible and in the most common words possible. Don't use any jargon, don't use any synonyms that you think sound more impressive or cooler or something like that. That just makes things harder to understand. And you might have an email that you've written, and I'll come along and I'll be like, hey, you could make that simpler to write. And you might be like, oh, what do you mean, Brad? Like, this is a very simple email to understand. And it's like, it's not like that. It's not like I'm saying your emails or your landing pages or your Slack messages or anything. I'm not saying that they're unintelligible or like not understandable, like they're too sophisticated or something like that. It's a very small difference that has a huge change. It's, a 10-word sentence as a 5-word sentence is actually a huge change. You might say in a vacuum, a 10-word sentence is not that long, Brad. People can read a 10-word sentence, that's fine. I'll be like, yeah, they can, but will they?
Yep.
Right? And if you could somehow repeat history, right, where you go through with your communication that you're doing, whether it's an email or whatever it's you're writing, if you write it one way, the original way you were going to write it, and then you could somehow go back in time and rewrite it in a shorter, much simpler way, I would bet a decent chunk of money that you would get vastly more engagement and understandability, if that's a word.
Yeah.
Vastly better engagement, understandability the second time round than the first time, like more than you expect from such a minor change.
Yeah.
So I'd say like do that. That's probably my first tip, is just like
keep it simple and short is a sort of great point. I'm just going to say, like, do you think this sort of relates to that? Like, so if you're writing about a topic that you know really well, you're going to think that the person on the other side of the page will understand sort of your speak, which is kind of what you talked about, like sort of removing the jargon. You've just got to kind of assume that the people that you're talking to don't really know what you're talking about, and just like trying to eliminate that confusion.
Yeah, 100%. 100%, I agree with that. And worst case scenario, right, is they do understand all the jargon that you would have used, but guess what? You wrote something even simpler than that, so they're still going to understand it anyway. Like, it's only going to have like a neutral or positive effect, right? It can't have like a negative effect. There was something else I was going to say related to this. Let me go back to my notes. Maybe it wasn't in my notes. Writing simple. Oh yeah. Sorry. Yeah, no, it was what I was going to say before. Writing short and writing simple is actually really hard and takes a long time, which is kind of like not what you'd expect. When it comes to writing, definitely just write out what you think is correct, right? Or what you think like just makes sense instinctively. Like, do the first round and don't give yourself writer's block by, being freaked out about like, oh, am I writing this short enough or simply enough? Just write it out and get the message out there, all the stuff you want to say. But then just like give yourself time to edit. Just accept that, it's worth giving things a once over edit at the very least, like even things like an email or something like that. And then it's much easier to go back through something that already exists and just be like, I now have the mission of removing words. I like when I'm doing it the first time, I don't want to have the mission of creating words and removing words at the same time. First time around, I just want to have the mission of creating words and getting all the thoughts out of my head onto the page. And then the second time through, just make it easier on yourself and just be like, okay, now I just have the mission of removing words, and just be as ruthless as possible and just be like, I want to make this thing. The goal is to make this thing as short as I possibly can. How can I do that? And just go word by word and be like, yes, cool, I can remove that. I can remove that. As you go, do the same thing with like synonyms. Cool, I'm using this word here, but oh, look, there's a synonym that's way simpler than that, and just do the swap. And then going through like that is great. Like it's easy. It's easier on yourself if you try and split those things out and have the writing and then the editing. It's even easier if you have someone else to edit it. So I've got a lot of praise at Go Cardless for making copy like shorter and punchier and simpler. But I actually have the unfair advantage of being the person that didn't have to write it in the first place, right? I have the unfair advantage of coming at it with a completely fresh mind, just critiquing someone else's writing. So in a similar vein, like if there's someone else in your business who can act as editor for you, like do that. It's going to be easier for you because all you have to do is worry about just bashing out the original thoughts like you would have done anyway. And it's going to be easier for them because like, as long as they're okay to do the editing, as long as that's okay, then they don't need to do anything else than just take something that's already written and basically like just cut the shit out of it and just like be like, yeah, cool, go on, that sucks. And it's just so much easier for a third party to do that.
They're going to be like less emotionally invested in the words as well. Like if you're writing something down, like you put it down for a reason, you probably get quite attached to it. Taking it out can probably feel a bit like, can be quite hard. You bring someone else in, they don't care. They're just gonna go to town on it.
Exactly, 100%. Yeah. Other things that are just like general writing rules. Let's see what applies to general writing here. I think like have like a really good headline, or like make use of headlines. Now it sounds like something that's just for a blog post, but it's not really. Like emails actually have what I would call 2 headlines at the very least, potentially even more headlines. One is the subject line itself, so what people see in their inbox, right? And that gets them to click through. The second one is once you're inside the email, right? You can use a larger font or a bold font or both to basically just have, and I'd recommend only really doing that like 1 to 3 times in an email as like sort of like headers to break up your email into like sections. Makes it so much easier to skim. Like if you send me like let's say a 4 paragraph email, that is quite taxing on the eyes, right? But if you send me an email that is an intro paragraph, header 1, paragraph 2, header 2, paragraph 3, header 3, paragraph 4, right? Immediately, it's way easier to read, especially if you're really intelligent about those headers, right? And you keep those headers short, punchy summaries of the text that's underneath. I mean, there's a reason why blog posts are written that way, right? Why good blog posts are written that way, why they're broken up with sensible headers that basically summarize the main point of the text below. It's super easy to engage with, right? When you read it, your eyes skim, you go all over the shop. Like I'm sure there's research out there to back this up, but basically, like we don't read things sort of one word at a time, very slowly and methodically. Like your brain does all sorts of stuff to just like fill in the blanks and pull stuff together. So make that easier for people, right? Reduce that friction on them. It's kind of like, it's almost like, how glasses make it easier for your eyes to see, like headers are going to make it easier for your brain to read. Like use that 100%, break things up into headers. I do it on Slack. I even do it with WhatsApp messages to friends sometimes. Like, honestly, sometimes it's like, you might think, okay, well, this is a really weird, like way to communicate with people, Brad. Why are you doing that? But it's like, honestly, people are inundated with messages, right? I'm not the only person WhatsApping them that day. I'm not the only person Slacking them that day. I'm not the only person emailing them that day. If I can do anything to make mine easier to read, even incrementally, that can be a big win. That can be the difference between my message actually hitting home with them and them actually doing whatever I want them to do, or them actually learning what I want them to learn. And everyone else who tried that day but didn't put in the same effort, them losing out to me, right? That sounds really selfish when I put it that way, but ultimately that's what we got to do, right? You got to get something across, like just make it the easiest friction. It's the same reason why if I go sign up for a service right now and I can just sign up with an ultra short sign up form and start using the service straight away, versus I have to do some enormous sign up form with tons of fields, and then they have to validate my account and I can't start using it for like 3 days. I'm going to use the first one. I'm going to use the first one because it's easy to use. Even if the second one, has like a marginally better features or something like that, like that is a lot of friction to get going. And like reducing that friction is really what it's all about when you're both these tips that I've listed so far, right? When you're making things short and simple, when you're breaking it up with sensible headers, it's all about reducing that friction and just making it as easy as possible for your message to just seep into their brain.
You just want to make it convenient. Like convenience is key, isn't it? Like it's why Amazon and stuff like that do really well, because they make it really convenient for their customers to do business with them. So making the same sort of thing with writing is definitely a great point.
100%. And then I think let's just leave this with like three. I'll have one more big tip, because I could always ramble forever about this stuff. Let me just pick out.
Save it for another episode, man.
Yeah. I mean, I can't be here talking about keeping things short and sweet and then not do it short and sweet. I mean, we already haven't done it short and sweet, but you know what I mean. What's another tip? Yeah, okay. I would say this one's pretty applicable to everything. Always have a CTA, and that's like a very marketing term, right? Call to action. Like it's just a statement or a phrase or whatever at the end where you're basically telling the reader what to do. Common in the world of talking about like content marketing, blog posts and stuff, because like you want someone to come to your blog post and then get the free value that it provides, and at the end you're basically trying to drive them towards something else, which eventually makes them a paying customer, right? But in the realm of anything else, having a CTA is so essential, because like if you're writing anything, you're intending for there to be a reader, right? You're intending for there to be a reader of what you're writing, and you're writing what you're writing for a reason, right? You want something to happen. It could just be an FYI, it could just be info, right? And all you want the other person to do is just understand, like, there's some information they should know. They don't have to act on it at all, but they should know it. Or it could be there's a very specific action you want them to take. Be very clear with that stuff. Like even in my personal life, like people will send me like WhatsApp messages, or all friends will talk about sending other friends WhatsApp messages and be like, oh yeah, the person, oh, I can't believe they never replied, or I can't believe, they never did this. And it's like, I mean, did your message actually ask them to do that?
Yeah. Did you ask them to reply?
Yeah. And like, did you make your expectations clear? Right. So it's basically like go through, sure, say what you need to say and give all the context and the appropriate info. Cool. But then make sure you end with the thing you want them to do. So like if I sent an email at GoCardless the other day to the North American team, and we'd published this this really cool blog post with I don't know, I don't need to get into that. It's not important to the people who listen to this or watch this, but it's a really cool blog post, and it was specifically about an American market thing, which is why I threw it out to the whole team over there and was like, hey, FYI, we got this thing. Basically the type of article that we created, I think, is better than any other similar articles of that kind on the internet. So it's like, let's shout out about this. I think we've now got, GoCardless now have the best version of this kind of article compared to anyone else out there. And it's specifically American related. So North American team, here you go, FYI. But I also wanted them to, share it on social media, get some more eyes on it, right?
Yeah.
So that I hope this is actually correct, and this actually isn't true, and I'm lying about it, but I'm pretty sure the very last line in my email was, hey, like, you can share this on social media right now by clicking here. And I actually wrapped that sentence in emojis just to draw a little more attention to it. We can be, quite playful with internal comms.
Yeah.
So yeah, they get through this email, and it was broken up by headers, right? They have the sections of, okay, what am I talking to you about? Why is it important? That kind of thing. And then at the very end, it's like, boom, emojis.
Yeah.
You can share this thing on social media by clicking here.
Yeah.
Or share this thing on social media by clicking, however I worded it, I don't remember. But basically, there's a reason why that is the last sentence and why it is a completely separate sentence from the rest. It's not the end sentence of a paragraph. It's a completely new paragraph, one sentence on its own. And the reason is because, once they get to the end, you just need to give them the very clear instruction on what you want them to do. So you've given all that preamble, end it though with the thing you want them to do. If it was just an FYI, I would have ended by saying that. I would have gone through the same email and just said, this is just an FYI. You don't need to do anything, but worth keeping in mind, or worth knowing about, that sort of thing. But instead it's like, you know what? Actually, I would like it if they shared this on social media. So it's like, okay, get through all the stuff that's important. Very end, last thing I say, share this on social media.
Yeah.
That's cool. So I mean, anytime you're writing something, whatever you want the reader to do, just include that at the end. Be very clear about it, particularly when there's next actions about stuff. I see people have conversations in a business setting, and they talk about sort of what needs to be done next. Like maybe in a meeting, for instance, you talk about, okay, these are the sort of things we're brainstorming, these are the sort of things that need to be done next on this task, and then they leave the meeting, and
nothing gets done.
No expectations were set. No one wrote down what the actions were and who had them. You know what I mean? Just be super clear about that stuff.
Yeah, That's why there are so many pointless meetings, because people don't set agendas, they don't follow through, they don't follow up, and we just waste time.
Yeah.
But I
So
love
like,
that.
yeah,
I love
what
that.
are these? How do we succinctly cover these writing tips again? What was it? So write super short and super simple, as in
Mhm.
use really simple words. Don't worry about jargon. That doesn't help anyone. In fact, I only really find jargon is helpful internally. Like sometimes there are long, complex things you talk about in a company, and
Yeah,
everyone has the same sort
like
of
internal
specialist knowledge.
lingo or
Yeah,
acronyms.
internal
Like
lingo can be helpful.
definitely don't use acronyms in your emails and stuff, because most people won't know what they are.
Yeah.
Just go
So
for it.
it can be helpful. It's not like a never do this, but in general, like just
Yeah,
talking about stuff short and simple
yeah,
can never harm you. It can only be neutral or
yeah,
positive, and I'd be willing to bet that it's
yeah,
most often positive.
yeah.
Middle tip, I've already forgotten. What was the middle tip? What
Was
were we
middle
talking
tip
about?
headlines? Headlines, was that?
Yeah, that's it.
Was
Break
it
things up with
headlines?
headlines and make
Headlines.
that make
Yeah.
that like yeah. So like headline of what you're actually doing,
Hmm.
like whether it be a subject line or the top of the document
Hmm.
or something. But also don't be afraid to break up body text into sections that have their own headers, even if it feels unusual. This is coming from a guy who sometimes uses headers like multi headers within a WhatsApp message because it's a long ass WhatsApp message, and I know that people are just going to tune out, so I break
Yeah.
that up.
Perfect.
And then the final one,
Call to
also,
action.
we literally just talked about it. Yeah, call to action. And end on the thing you want someone to do,
Yeah.
right? If that's just an FYI, tell them it was just an FYI.
Yeah.
If you want them to actually do something, tell them to do it. Be really clear
Hmm.
about what they need to do. And also keep it short, right? It's kind of, it leans on the first tip. Be short
Hmm.
and simple
Hmm.
about what you want them to do and lock that right at the end of what you're talking about. Those are writing tips that can apply
Yeah.
across almost any kind of business writing, to be
Yeah.
honest. Like there's nothing to do with content marketing specifically. It's very
Hmm.
broadly applicable.
Yeah. Like sort of call to action is, perfect in any scenario. Even if you're giving a speech, like, you're not creating content, but you're giving a speech and stuff. So Brad, on that note, what is your call to action to the audience?
I just do this for fun, man. I'm not actually trying to get anything out of this, to be honest. But I will open up anyone watching this. Same as last time. I really enjoy copywriting. I find it immensely interesting as a profession. If you want to learn any more about copywriting, you have questions for me, questions about copywriting, even if you have something that you've written, whether it's published already or whether it's something that you're going to publish in the future, and you just want like a second set of eyes on it to like give you some feedback, I can't promise that I can give you a lot of time because it's something that I'd just do completely for free. I wouldn't charge you
Mhm.
for it. But yeah, I'd definitely give you my thoughts on that, which you may find helpful. So if that's the case, what's on my little Zoom thing here? I think you can
Brad
find me if
the
you go to
website. Yeah.
bradthewebsite.com. It links to my LinkedIn profile. That's where you're going to be able to get in touch with me most easily. So
Perfect.
go via that website,
Hmm.
click on my LinkedIn profile, connect with me. You don't even need to add a note. I just accept all LinkedIn connections. I don't really mind. And then drop me a DM and I'll be happy to pick up anything with you.
Brilliant. Perfect, Brad.